أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اليوم أحل لكم طيبات وطعام الذين أوتوا الكتاب حل لكم وطعامكم حل لهم والمحصنات من المؤمنات والمحصنات من الذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبلكم. This day all good things have been made lawful for you, and the food of the people of the book is lawful for you, and your food is lawful for them. And lawful for you are chaste believing women, and chaste women from among those who were given the book before you. Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 6. As the Quran tells us, lawful for you are chaste believing women. It's lawful for you. Islam has in mind the physical needs of man and woman alike. Some other faiths cruelly impose celibacy upon their followers. Islam gives the proper method of fulfilling our physical, spiritual, and emotional needs. By allowing marriage with chaste believers, Islam creates an environment where everyone's rights are fulfilled, and it also creates an environment where the next generation can flourish. Islam is the complete means to contentment. In recent times, we have seen the emergence of a movement that challenges our identity as Muslims in the name of progressiveness and freedom. This movement is the LGBTQ movement. And the topic of my speech is maintaining my identity in an age of identity crisis. From the beginning, Islam has always affirmed identity. It ensures that there is no confusion over who is a man and who is a woman. The Holy Prophet ﷺ cursed the man who dressed like a woman and the woman who dressed like a man. To further this, we see in Islam, men should grow beards. They shouldn't grow their hair to look feminine. They are not to adorn themselves with gold, and they're not to wear silk. Women also have a distinguished dress code in Islam. And in Islam, there's no confusion on gender. In the household as well, roles are clearly defined for man and woman. A relevant issue in the LGBTQ movement has been allowing children to make decisions on gender issues based on their own judgment. The teenage years are challenging for everyone. You need certain hormones for your growth, your physical, mental, and emotional well-being, and to become the adult that God intended. Yet this movement's goal is to deprive children of these hormones before they even hit puberty. Even the National Health Service in UK now acknowledges that the unknown effects of gender-affirming care. Children cannot possibly understand the consequences of this decision, yet this movement tries to empower them to make it. The correction for teenage gender dysphoria happens naturally with puberty. Chemically castrating the child is not the answer. Reproduction is our biological purpose. Indoctrinating children to strip themselves of their ability to reproduce in the name of affirming gender identity is extremely cruel. On the other hand, this movement says conversion therapy, which is a form of counseling one can go through when they do not want to be attracted to the same gender, is somehow a form of persecution. And consent's relevant. When we talk to supporters of the LGBTQ movement and we speak about gay marriage and where to draw the line, The supporters of the movement say as long as the two adults are in age of consent, it's fine. We should let them do what they want. But what about gender-affirming care? At that point, age of consent goes out the window? In this society, you cannot get a tattoo before you're 18. But somehow you can forfeit your ability to reproduce for the rest of your life by seeking gender-affirming care? This is not gender-affirming care. This is flat out wrong. Hazur Anwar Ahildallah Ta'ala bin Asr Aziz said it can never be morally right for a society to encourage young people to change their biological gender or sex. This is completely against the teachings of Islam. And the LGBT movement claims its values are based on acceptance, pride, and freedom. So I ask supporters of this movement, why don't you highlight the stories of the people who transitioned and made irreversible changes to their body and are now living in regret? Rather than to empower them and give them a voice, it is this very movement that shuns them. You can open Reddit and see for yourself how members of this movement minimize and reject the experiences of those who either detransitioned or have regrets about transitioning, just because it doesn't suit the LGBTQ agenda. And these poor souls are left abandoned by the same movement that they bet their entire lives on. Where is your pride? Where is your freedom now? And this movement is also attempting to create heroes and push boundaries in various fields. Men are transitioning and participating in women's sports. In one case, a man transitioned and took part in mixed martial arts against professional female fighters. In one fight, he left his female opponent with a fractured skull. The female fighter said, "I've never been so overpowered in my life. I've been hit by women my whole career. Those fists, that grip, did not belong to a woman." The man who transitioned was awarded the bravest athlete in 2020. Is this social justice? Is this human rights? Not only is this not seen as a crime, it's celebrated by this very movement. This movement encroaches on other civil rights movements. And not only does it encroach on other movements, but it encroaches on our own freedom of thought and speech. There are 72 pronouns and counting today. They are now common in school, social media, and the workplace. Misgendering is now even considered hate speech in Canada. In reality, what's happening is they are dictating that I play into their delusions. You can be deluded and oppose reality, but please don't expect me to play along. The society that we live in does not even allow you to express your disagreement with the values of the LGBTQ movement without facing backlash. Even in international law, we see that countries are sanctioned by the United States for standing up against this movement. Uganda, in particular, has recently introduced laws against homosexuality, and they're facing sanctions by America. But on the other end, the US is funding the killing of innocent Palestinians. Is this justice? And society will even abandon science in order to appease this movement. This is not morality, rather it's a lack of conviction. With certainty, we know that gay blood dramatically increases the risk of accidental HIV infection through blood donations. Despite this, gay blood is now being accepted in blood banks across the country, despite the increased risk. Do we not have the courage to stand up and state these facts and call out these inconsistencies? And this movement does not hide their intentions. At LGBTQ rallies, you'll often hear the chant, "We're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children." This movement has taken something that every child adores, and rainbows are something children are naturally inclined to. especially when they're learning colors. And this has become the symbol for this movement. When you open LGBTQ websites, the first thing that comes up is a warning that if you hear your parents coming, close this website and delete your browsing history. They're teaching the child how to hide from their parents and effectively telling the child that we know what's better for you than your own parents. Disney movies are introducing more and more gay characters, and their agenda is becoming less and less subtle. YouTube apologized because a paternal control feature blocked LGBTQ content. Hollywood and tech are promoting this movement's agenda at every turn. Canada has mandatory LGBTQ education as early as 5th grade. Today, in school, children are taught a new alphabet. Instead of their ABCs, they are being taught LGBTQIA++. Elementary school libraries have LGBTQ books. They promote them to children. These books are as accessible as early as the kindergarten years. They include cartoon graphics of their content and go into as much depth as to give instructions on the best practices to prepare for sodomy. This movement targets society's most vulnerable, our children. Ordinarily, such things are not discussed, nor should they be. But when our children are being taught this in school, it becomes necessary. And these efforts are bearing fruits for this movement. 1 in 5 members of Generation Z identify as LGBTQ. And this is a continued trend with each passing generation. More and more people are identifying with this movement. Gender-changing surgeries are increasing exponentially. They're here, they're queer, and they're coming after your children. They're coming after your children. How can we respond to these attacks on the innocence of our youth? Children spend most of their day away from home at school, immersed in this very society. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Ahmadullah Ta'ala bin Asr Aziz has recently highlighted our defense. When he was asked about how to present Islam's views on homosexuality to non-Muslims, Hazrat Anwar Ahmadullah Ta'ala bin Asr Aziz said, "It is essential to create a friendly environment and friendship with one's child, so that when they come home from school, they are able to openly speak to their parents about what they learned. Then one could take the opportunity to talk about the truth of the matter." Hazur concluded by saying, "Do not lose your own children while attempting to reform others. That should be our foremost concern." So our defense is befriending our children, having open conversations with them in a relationship of trust, and instilling those Islamic values in them. In this movement, we have also seen the acceptance and normalization of homosexuality as well. People ask, if it's not hurting you, why not look the other way and ignore the issue? I tell them, it's hurting society. Islamically, we have a responsibility to care for our neighbors and countrymen. This movement is causing major health problems in their own followers. A study found that over the previous year, half of LGBTQ people had experienced depression. Additionally, this movement encourages sexual promiscuity. This naturally results in STDs in general. HIV is a disease that primarily affects homosexual men. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said that if you see something wrong, one should try to stop it with his hands. And if one does not have the power, and if he is unable to do so, then he should try to change it with his tongue. And if he is still unable to do so, then he should lament it in his heart. In this time, an Ahmadi Muslim should never fear the truth. We stand against the persecution of all people, yes, but it is important that we say the right word. And this is a black and white issue in Islam. God punished the people of Prophet Lot alayhi salam for the act of homosexuality. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, "There is nothing I fear for my ummah more than the deed of Prophet Lot ﷺ." We as Muslims cannot accept or promote this act, especially as a society. And the Quran tells us that these societies will accept the societies that accept the practice of homosexuality will face Allah Ta'ala's punishment. And if you accept God, you have to accept that He has a nizam, a system. The system that God created is that males and females of a species reproduce to produce the next generation. In humanity, the institution of marriage is there to allow the next generation to flourish and give them a safe environment to be raised in. You can attempt to challenge or defy the system, as the LGBTQ movement does. But if you do, you and your progeny inevitably die off. If this movement, if this sort of love wins, then humanity dies. And the question of morality is also relevant in this discussion. What defines morality? This society doesn't have conviction in their morals. It's all in front of us. Politicians are bought, Hollywood is bought, morals are bought. This is what lobbying is. This is how the society is framed. And is this the system that we put our faith in, our trust in, and we allow to decide what's right and wrong? This is why we see something that was detested 20, 30 years ago now being celebrated. Without an outside reference point from God, we can never truly define morality. Following society's morals will lead you down various paths. There's a Nazi morality, there's a communist morality, a capitalist morality, a slave owner's morality, an LGBTQ morality, and so on. Therefore, true morality can only be found in religion and in relation to God. Even then, today we see many faiths abandoning their values for the sake of social acceptance. We can see churches clad in rainbow flags. Just this week, Pope Francis allowed priests to bless same-sex marriages. What sort of conviction is this? For Ahmadi Muslims, the Quran is the ultimate and perfect source of morality. There is no compromise. Each Ahmadi should have full conviction and trust in the Quran that it is the perfect guidance for man. And the Quran is clear on this issue. It is a sin, and if this sin spreads in society, the society can fall victim to God's punishment. Still, it is important to remember, Islam condemns the act, not the individual. Hating someone's action does not mean hating the person. We love the people, but we can hate the act. Just because you accept people doesn't mean you accept their actions. Your love can be expressed by not agreeing with actions that you feel are detrimental to people. If I take a sharp object from my child, it's not me hating them. It's me wanting what's best for them. A good, loving brother is not afraid to tell his brother what he needs to hear. And it's important to remember, Islam is a means to reform. These people will also come to Islam. 20% of the youngest generation identifies as LGBTQ. Those who fall into sin can find peace and forgiveness in Islam. During the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, didn't murderers, thieves, prostitutes, alcoholics all find new life in Islam? And don't sinners find new life in Islam today? We have to be prepared to reform and accept these people, just like any other person who comes to Islam, a sinner, and is seeking their God. And I feel it's not fair to discuss this movement without discussing the issue of pornography. Pornography is a pathway to sexual deviancy. There are countless posts online of youth that highlight how their porn addiction led them to a number of riskier sexual behaviors, including homosexuality. Keep in mind, this is one of the many dangerous places that pornography will lead you. In his Friday sermon at Beit Rahman in 2018, Hazur Anwar Ahiyadullah Ta'ala bin Nasir al-Aziz warned us that pornography leads to domestic abuse and adultery. Even serial killer and rapist Ted Bundy said that pornography is what fueled his murder and rape of over 30 women. In his final interview before his execution, he said, "I've lived in prison a long time now. I've met a lot of men who are motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by the addiction to pornography." If you are constantly consuming pornography, it is inevitable that it will lead you to a path of sexual deviancy, whether it be homosexuality, domestic violence, pedophilia, and so on. We also have to remember our second condition of ba'at, that we shall keep away from falsehood, fornication, adultery, trespasses of the eye, debauchery, dissipation, cruelty, dishonesty, mischief, and rebellion. And we will not permit ourselves to be carried away by passions, however strong they may be. So how do we break this cycle if we're struggling with it? We must elevate our tastes and our interest. We must remember the oath of allegiance that we took in order to be included in this blessed Jamaat. Even fantasies are an adultery of the mind, as Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam described them. Not just homosexuality, but any unlawful sexual practice, be it fornication, adultery, or homosexuality, is not permitted by God. And the Holy Prophet ﷺ has prescribed us a remedy if we cannot control our desires. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said that fasting restrains one's impulses. Thus, someone who may be struggling with homosexual tendencies and is a Muslim should fast. This movement's entire philosophy is to do what feels good, to follow your desires. If we do this, what separates us from animals? Do not become a slave to your desires. Rather, become a slave to God Almighty. And if you're still struggling, do not lose hope. As mentioned earlier, Islam is a faith for reform. The promised Messiah, alayhi salam, said, "Their God will forgive those who, whenever they commit a foul deed or wrong their souls, they remember Allah, the Exalted, and seek forgiveness for their sin, and do not persist in their sin." Do not forget our God is a forgiving God, and Islam is a religion in which sinners can find a path for reformation. In summary, this movement is not championing consent, not championing human rights, not championing love, but it's lust. It's bought, it's all deception, it's deceiving you. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said that in the latter days, homosexuality will be rampant. Men will dress like women. We need to recognize it. Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu anhu said, "Husn har rang mein acha hai magar khayal rahe. Dana samajhte ho jise tum kahin daam na ho." Beauty is good in every form, but pay heed. That which you consider food might be a trap. My brothers, everything that glitters isn't gold. This is the greatest fitna, what the Holy Prophet ﷺ warned us of, the time of Dajjal. And in the Hadith, he's referred not just as Dajjal, but Al-Masih Dajjal, meaning the false Messiah. He's not deceiving you. He's deceiving you into thinking that he's your savior and that he's the one that's helping you, but he's actually hurting you. He's trying to convince you that something that is against the nature of man should be promoted and encouraged. In fact, he's been so successful that a recent survey found that 52% of Muslims in America said society should approve of homosexuality. Is this not the need for the Imam? And it's important to mention a story from the life of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Lut alayhi salam were contemporaries. And God informed Hazrat Ibrahim about the upcoming punishment to the people of Lot. He had a conversation with God, and in this conversation, Hazrat Ibrahim asked Allah Ta'ala, "My Lord, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom?" Allah Ta'ala said, "If I find 50 people, I will spare the whole city for their sake." But there were not 50. Then Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "Now that I have been so bold as to speak, although I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of righteous is 5 less than 50? And God said He would not wipe away the city if there were 45 people in the city, but there were not 45. This continued a few times until Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "May the Lord not be angry with me, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found?" And for the sake of 10, God said He will not destroy it. But there were not 10. Thus, the people of Lot were destroyed. And we have to remember what the people of Lot did. It was this very act which is being discussed and being forced upon us. It's this movement that we're discussing. The world is on the brink of collapse. We all see it. And it's our responsibility to become one of those 50, 40, 20, or 10 righteous souls who do not give into sin, for whom God saves an entire nation. We have accepted the Imam of the age. Our Jamaat is the one that can produce those souls. We have to recognize it. Every Jewish mother tells their child from a small age that they are the chosen people, that they are better than everyone else. But the reality is that we are better than them. Jews rejected messenger after messenger, and because of this, they lost prophethood, they lost guidance, and they became a lost people. But Ahmadis accept every messenger. What are Ahmadi mothers and fathers telling their children today? Are you selling your children to society for the sake of worldly recognition and respect? Do your children have conviction in their faith? And to the Ahmadi youth, if your parents fail to make you understand your status, it's on you to understand what it means to be an Ahmadi Muslim. As an Ahmadi Muslim, you carry the burden of the world in your prayers and in your actions. Ahmadi Muslims are the ones that will bring this world back to God. So my brothers and sisters, read, research, and develop certainty in faith. Understand your worth. Understand your bet. Take pride in your identity as an Ahmadi Muslim. The ones who accepted the promised Messiah, the prophet of the time, the ones who live united under Khilafat in a time where you cannot find unity anywhere else. The ones who experience a living God, both individually and as a Jamaat. Please, understand your worth. Do not trade gold for sand. Money and acceptance from your peers does not compare to the peace and contentment of this life and the hereafter you get through Ahmadiyyat. We are those who through Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam's prayers and with Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Ahadullah Ta'ala bin Asl Aziz's guidance can reform and save nations. We are promised victory upon victory. Do not throw it away for short-lived movements that lack conviction, that lack values. Remember, my brothers and sisters, we are the ones with the honor task of raising the flag of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam above any other flag, above the flag of any nation or movement, the flag that truly champions the rights of mankind. This is an honor that millions wished for and they prayed for. We have accepted the Mahdi and the Masih. We have the most true and the most elevated form of faith. The rest of the world sits in confusion. We all see it. While we can sit with true conviction in our faith, may Allah enable us to fulfill our obligations as Ahmadi Muslims and fulfill the rights of our brothers and sisters. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.